Probably should have rewritten that, but it's, we'll just keep going. All right. Brand new style of keynote. This is, so they're TED Talk styles. We're going to bring up our 5 TED speakers: Peter Rutten, Ashok Reddy, Hayden Lindsay, Keith Sisson, and Jonathan Adams. Let's give them a nice hand, everybody. Look, you look like boys to men, all grown up, don't you, huh? All right, that's good. Well, we have a lot to get through today. We chat a little bit, but I know each one of you wants to get as much information, and we want to get as many questions in as we can. So to kick things off, we're going to have Peter Rutten from IDC. Let's give them all a nice hand, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, good morning. I'm very honored to be here, and I reckon that the combined knowledge and experience on mainframes in this room must be absolutely astounding. So I was actually hoping that I can download it all while I'm talking. What I'm going to talk about today is I'm going to show you some results of research that we've done at IDC among mainframe users to determine whether they are extending the platform and making it part of their, what we all now know to be digital transformation, and how they benefit from that. I will show you the initiatives that these companies undertook and the quantified results that these initiatives yielded. And what we've concluded is that thanks to the hardware and software innovation on the platform, on the mainframe, it has really transitioned from a supporting platform of transaction revenue, the way we've always known it to be, to a source of revenue growth and innovation. Indeed, our research has found that businesses that engage in 2 things, modernization and integration on the mainframe, really drive new business innovation. They grow their revenue, increase operational efficiency, and we've started to call this adopting a connected mainframe culture. Now let me tell you briefly what we did, just sort of about the research. We took 9 very large mainframe running companies, identified the people that are most knowledgeable about their mainframe operations, people very much like yourselves, and we I'll be honest, we kind of tortured them for a couple of hours. We asked them questions and probed and questions and probed, and the goal of this type of research, which we do a lot at IDC, is always to get deep insights, but not just deep insights, also quantifiable insights. Dollar amounts, percentages, MIPS, staff numbers, downtime, those kinds of outcomes. And that's what I'll be sharing with you today, what we found there. So some high-level findings. I won't be using too many slides, but just a few. Early adopters of a connected mainframe culture take a business-first approach, not a technology-first approach. So what matters most and foremost is there are no preconceptions about where a workload lives. If it belongs on the mainframe, that's where it goes. If it belongs on the distributed infrastructure, that's where it goes. Early adopters of a connected mainframe extend the mainframe rather than migrate off. This means that they leverage all the new capabilities that the platform offers, and they're not just letting it sort of hum along, doing the jobs that it has been doing very well for many years. Early adopters of a connected mainframe culture regard the mainframe an integral part of the entire infrastructure. So it's part of the data center, all the infrastructure in the data center, but also of the rest of the outside world, what's going on over there. And then early adopters of a connected mainframe have demonstrated, they've seen the results that innovation on a mainframe is feasible and that it's beneficial. Now, on the other hand, what we've also found, and that's not just with this research, but what we see talking to a lot of you and your peers, is that there are 2 causes on why businesses can be slow or even no adopters of a connected mainframe approach. And those are organizational inertia and outdated perceptions about the platform. That must sound familiar to some of you. Actually, I would as a researcher, I would love to know, to whom here does that sound familiar? Can you give me a show of hands? quite a few. Yeah. It surprises me sometimes how outdated perceptions about the platform are. My favorite is when people say, oh, yeah, the mainframe, that system is 50 years old. So is the Mercedes AMG. 50 years old. Look at the 2017 model, which I hope to buy someday. So what the early adopters did is, and I've mentioned this, they modernize and they integrate. And they do this to achieve business innovation and value. Modernization means creating a platform that is integration ready. So it's sort of step one and then step two within the data center and with the outside world. And then integration really means connecting the platform with the rest of the data center and the IT processes and opening it up to the outside world. The resulting business innovation that we found among these companies that we talked to and questioned, time to market acceleration. They were able to start developing new products. They were able to start identifying adjacent markets, develop new markets, access new business ecosystems, partner ecosystems, gave them brand new customer insights, and they were able to develop and execute on their growth strategies, all because they were working with this connected mainframe concept. So let's go a little deeper down to these sort of initiatives level. What were they actually doing? In this chart, the x-axis measures the adoption rate of a specific initiative, and the y-axis shows the cumulative business benefits that they were able to generate. Most common, we found that the initiatives at the top there, running Java on the mainframe, developing mobile apps that access the mainframe, and the use of APIs, both internal and external, are what a lot of these companies are doing today. And those are both modernization and integration initiatives. Now, sort of being adopted, not quite yet, not as much yet, are the initiatives in the middle. Web enablement, Linux on the mainframe, firing up those IFLs, and including the mainframe in DevOps and Agile. The companies that are doing that are saying they really benefit from it, but not everybody is doing that yet. And then really the early adopters today are making the mainframe part of a hybrid cloud deployment. That's still very much early days, but it's happening. They're developing next-gen applications on the mainframe, meaning using modern frameworks, the languages that your app developers really like to use, open source. And they're deploying the mainframe as a service. Just a few. That's early days, but it's happening, and they're also seeing very good results with that. So the companies we research are all doing some combination of these initiatives. Some more than others. None were doing them all. But as a result, they were really able to deliver innovation at a pace comparable to the entire IT organization. So what is the business value they really realized? There was a significant impact on the business results for these companies. They improved operational efficiencies, and they were generating quite a bit of additional revenue. $200 million. Now, these were on average. These were billion-dollar companies, but yet a significant amount of additional revenue that they were able to generate, thanks to their connected mainframe culture. The initiatives that they undertook, what I was showing you in that previous chart, achieved break-even within, on average, again, 10 months. So they invested in a number of these. I think the average was about 3, and saw an ROI, return on investment, within a year. And then, what's even more, by staying on the mainframe rather than migrating, and so there's a lot of calculation and determining what kind of initiatives they were going to take on the mainframe that they wouldn't be able to do. Ultimately, we came to a calculation that that their cost of operation was going to be 47% lower on average than had they moved off the platform. And that includes hardware and maintenance, licensing, power, facilities, IT staff management time, impact on downtime, and migration cost, obviously. Also, by extending their mainframe, they realized various cost efficiencies. 27% lower licensing, 52% more efficient management. One participant in the research said that their mainframe total cost of ownership had gone down by half, even though their transaction volumes had doubled. And they said that's due to IT infrastructure cost reductions and IT staff productivity. And then we also saw 15% higher application developer productivity. So what is our conclusion after we completed this research? We believe that the mainframe has a central role in your company's digital transformation. Businesses that do not take advantage of its broad range of capabilities are giving up real value, real competitive advantage. Like I said at the beginning of my talk, the mainframe has transitioned from a supporting platform of transaction revenue to a source of revenue, growth, and innovation. Businesses that engage in the modernization, as I mentioned, and the integration, and that take a number of those initiatives that I showed you on that S-curve will drive new business innovation. And they will be able to grow their revenue and increase that operational efficiency. Now, this audience may have suspected as much. Some of you may already be there. But for those amongst you who are pushing against that big rock of inertia, I hope that this data helped a little bit. And with that, I have the honor, let me look if I have an envelope here. I do. I have the honor to announce the next video of the evening, and that can't be right. No, really? That can't be right. Oh, okay. Hidden Figures.
What's it going to take to make this thing worth the price tag?
Well, we're just getting up to speed here, Mr. Harrison. I need more manpower. I need programmers, folks to feed the cards.
We'll get them for crying out loud.
Okay.
All right? You're the IBM man, right?
Yes, sir.
Well, we'll pull them out of the sky if you have to.
Understood.
I'm not paying any of you.
So, Hayden, you're the IBM guy, right?
I am indeed. But you're the CA guy.
Yes, I used to be the IBM guy, but now I'm the CA guy. In case you haven't seen this movie, it was nominated for Oscar, The Hidden Figures. I think one of the things about this movie is that there are 3 African-American women who play key roles in this movie who are mathematical geniuses who are called computers, are actually help John Glenn basically launch him into orbit and bring him back. And this is something which very few people know. And so I think this was one of the reasons we used this as a theme.
Yeah, and you know, a little bit of an announcement here. I missed the rehearsal last night and I missed it this morning, so we just might be a little rough. Okay. But yeah, you know, the mainframe has been involved in important things in history, including space flight. And I do think this analogy of Hidden Figures is pretty cool because behind the scenes, the mainframe is doing yeoman's work. You all know this, but a lot of people do not understand it. And the thing that is maybe more surprising to many is that while we continue to do what we think of as system of record type work, you know, classic transactions, more and more those are being exposed in a digital transformation way or to enable a digital transformation with services or API interfaces. But then there's the new workload, you know, Java or analytics inline in transactions, blockchain, or like machine learning, which we just announced the other day. So the mainframe is as relevant, if not more so, than ever.
Yeah, I think one of the hidden irony here is that just like the women in that movie, I think many of the people, especially the newer CIOs and the people who are not brought up in the mainframe culture, they don't realize the hidden value or the hidden engine of what mainframe is. And I think that when you see the movie, one of the things is, I think we also have seen there is a business case hurdle, just like the woman runs all the way to the bathroom on the other end every time she has to do something. It's just like when you want to build something new or new workloads, you all have to have a higher bar. So this is really, I think the examples, what we want to share today is based on some of the things what Peter said. So we have actually customer case studies. We can kind of share the hidden engine behind the most successful businesses in the world, the governments and retail and airlines. And it's not just about supporting revenue, but actually driving new revenue growth.
Yeah, so the first client that I want to mention, and there are many, many that we could talk about. I just picked 2 examples. First one is Danske Bank. This is a client I've worked with for at least 20 years, and they've always been wanting to modernize and leverage IT in support of the business, which is what IT's role is. But in the most recent innovation that they said, okay, we need to, in order to be a first mover, in order to really be the lead in the market, we need to service enable our back-end capabilities. We have great back-end capabilities, but we need to expose them. And so they chose, just like they chose our Visual Age suite of products 15, 20 years ago, they chose our modern Eclipse-based suite called Application Delivery Foundation for Z, which is our leading IDE plus our PD tools that we've now integrated together much more so than they were in the past. But they also use Rational Team Concert or our other tools in order to get this first mover advantage. But the key is focus on modernization and see how IT can help the business.
I think Peter showed the car analogy, which is actually a good one, right? If you look at 60s, I mean, one of my favorite cars is Porsche. Now there's a Porsche hybrid. So I almost think about this as one of the patterns we saw, like BCBS in South Carolina, for example. So Mainframe, the way they use it, there's ZOS-related workloads, and there's also Linux on Mainframe now. So what many of these customers like BCBS are doing is to bring those together. You can run a lot of the newer workloads like Spark on Z and machine learning and other things on Linux, and you can share the memory and no latency, and you don't have to move data off the mainframe. So we find many of the customers are using it almost like a hybrid cloud or a hybrid car kind of analogy, right? So that's one pattern we found. So that way they also are able to protect the data. You don't have to move data off the data into data lakes and bring it back and do analysis. So that's something which is repeatedly we find. There was another healthcare organization I think they interviewed. They actually connect Internet of Things back into the mainframe. And there is a company who does connected cars connecting back into the mainframe. So you can think about it as, I think about it as a hybrid car analogy, which is mainframe. Many people think in your companies as this 1960s system, but it's really the latest, fastest computer with a hybrid car engine, which can do both the new workloads as well as the existing workloads.
Yep. So the next client I'd like to talk about is Nationwide, and there's many things you could say there. They were an early adopter of modernization and agile, and now DevOps. I started working with them probably 8 years ago. The key thing here, and I think it's a good lesson for us all, is they were very serious, but they were also pragmatic. And so they decided you can't change everything all at once. You change a few things, get some successes, now change a few more things. And so do this in a staged manner, which they did. The other thing was they measured the improvement. And they have some very impressive results, like 50% improvement in quality, 50% improvement in on-time delivery. And so the one contrast, if you've ever gone to like DevOps talks where the born on the web companies are out there, their metrics are, hey, we can deploy 560 times a day into production. That's cool, but it's sort of a geeky, techie metric. It's not tied as much to the business. It probably helps the business. But so when you're embracing DevOps and trying to improve things, think about metrics that can actually measure business impact. And the other thing about Nationwide, they would say they are never done. They are incredibly advanced, but they're never done because none of us are ever done. The key is to push that rock a little bit and get started and defeat inertia.
So there is another one pattern which I want to identify is, I think people ask about workloads moving off mainframe, right? I think one of the patterns we found was actually interesting, which is some of the workloads coming back to the mainframe. So we had some of the customers obviously don't want to share the names, but one of the largest credit card processing company in the world recently decided when they looked at what they're doing in Europe and Asia, they're actually moving back many of the distributed transaction processing back onto the mainframe because that's the best platform for them to run per transaction. They run tens of thousands of transactions per second. So this is one example, but then you also don't hear many of the things what happens when something goes down, like the last month there was an airline problem. People suddenly jump to, oh, it must be mainframe legacy problem. So the customers, when we actually looked at it, they moved some of the flight operations off the mainframe, and the flight scheduling controls were running on the mainframe. That part continued to run. When there was a power failure on the operations, flight operations, the gate management, everything went down. So the CEO of the company said it was not the mainframe. So what happens is, even there was another incident earlier this year where we had the people couldn't get into a country because the passport system was down. Many of the planes were circling around for 4 hours. And one of the things, we got on a call for 4 hours to look at what happened. They thought it was a mainframe, but the problem was on a distributed server, data server. And the resolution they took was to move it onto the mainframe for those 4 hours so they can get the people back. So.
Okay, the final example I'll use is about our own adoption of DevOps. I've been out, and my team and all have been out promoting this for almost a decade, that, hey, we can do DevOps on the mainframe or modernization on the mainframe just like we can on distributed. We can keep pace with those guys, but using 30-year-old technology is an inhibitor. And we've been telling this story, and then we looked in the mirror and realized we're not exactly following our own advice. And so from January to April of last year, we shut down all feature development on a large number of products and spent the team's energy putting a DevOps pipeline in place. And so now we're able to ship monthly any of the 17 products that are built on top of our new ZOS Explorer platform. Last year we shipped like 94 releases of them. But monthly releases, in contrast to one major and one minor per year prior to this. But the message is, we weren't exactly following our own advice. We had to stop, make an investment. You have to do the same thing. Just slapping a tool on somebody's desk is not how you really get DevOps maturity or modernization maturity.
So when IBM on the mainframe goes DevOps, what does it mean to the rest of us, right? So we all have to adopt continuous delivery. So one of the things I think, more than that, I think at CA, I would say many people say mainframe can go as fast as it can. I think when you look at the pattern, the companies who have been successful, what they say is they treat mainframe as like any other service. They basically want to move as fast. They can innovate as much as they want. So it's more, they're trying to balance that with mainframe being mission essential. Anything you do needs to be run 24/7. It should be highly secure. So we have adopted that ourselves in CA. I know that Hayden talked about IBM. I think there is no reason for why you cannot adopt that. And I think the curve, what Peter showed, it was really the mainframe as a service. Mainframe is just another service. And you can innovate. I mean, we ourselves have just launched artificial intelligence machine learning on mainframe, like mainframe.ai. It's basically anybody can innovate on mainframe now, combined with the hybrid cloud technology we talked about. So I think with that, I think before we finish, given we got this award on Hidden Figures, I want to thank the audience here, as well as my parents. And I have the studio, the SHARE. My third grade teacher was very critical in my upbringing. My dog, and my doorman in New York City. So, and also now with that, I want to introduce Keith Sisson with our next presenter.
Thank you, Richard. Good morning. My name is Keith Sisson. I'm the Director of Technology at CompuWare. And today we've been talking about the effect on the mainframe during the digital age. Well, practically speaking, every business has been affected by internet, mobile apps, social media, and I guess I would say affected is an understatement. One of the main effects that the digital channels has is they've allowed upstart companies to get between businesses and their customers. These digital channels break down a lot of traditional barriers of entry for customers. And the digital channels introduce innovation and technology very, very quickly, weekly, daily, hourly. Now, I've worked for CompuWare for 26 years, and during that time, I've seen a lot of challenges that required change to overcome. But what we need in the digital age is more than just change. We need what I call transformation. Now, the definition of transformation is change and innovation, but it's doing it at digital speed while overcoming obstacles. And the most important part of that definition is the digital speed. If a CIO at your company or an executive picks to develop a distributed app over a mainframe app, the chances are they're doing it because they feel like they can develop that app faster in a distributed environment. So essentially, they're picking speed of development over performance and scale and reliability. They're picking speed over security and even cost. However, the good news is, as the folks here behind me have already mentioned, is that the mainframe apps can be developed at any speed that your company can. It's a process problem. It's not a technology problem. There's no infrastructure limitations that allow. The mainframe is an agile platform. So at CompuWare, we knew we needed to transform too. We were taking 18 months to deliver innovation into our projects and into our products. And in the digital age, that's way too slow. So we needed a mechanism, a repeatable process where we could stand up innovation, vet it and refine it with our customers, and implement it into our products. And obviously, you probably guessed that process is agile development with DevOps. So agile development is that iterative process, invent, refine, and implement. But the DevOps part, in a real nutshell, the DevOps part is removing constraints to that development. Now, my team is actually at CompuWare represents that ops part of that DevOps process. We needed to be in lockstep with what was happening with development so as not to be a constraint. We don't want to be a roadblock to what's going on. We went from an 18-month delivery cycle to a 90-day cycle. So we no longer had the luxury where we could develop for a certain number of months and then throw it over the wall for operations and the rest of the company to take over and do something with it. We needed to be in lockstep so that we were ready to go and not a constraint. In actuality, though, everybody in the company had to be in that. Marketing and sales, even in accounting and legal, had to be in lockstep so that when we were ready to go, there wasn't any last-minute issues that we needed to do. So because of Agile DevOps, we sort of think of ourselves now as a 40-year-old startup company. It changed our entire corporate culture. So the first thing that my team did is we did an analysis of all the internal applications that we used. And what we found out really fast at our company is we were really good at the mainframe infrastructure and the apps. The distributed infrastructure was kind of a bit of a hairball for us. So it was a little bit, that hairball distributed environment was causing us a constraint to develop. So we came up with a notion that we call two-platform IT. And that is we take the mainframe infrastructure and leave it in the data center and put as much strategic apps on it as makes sense. And then everything else that used to be in distributed, we moved into a cloud service. So software as a service, platform as a service, infrastructure used mostly. So we wanted to be mainframe-centric, but we didn't want everything to be in silos. We wanted to have this cohesive computing environment that we operate on. So even though the mainframe is in-house and the distributed stuff is now cloud, we created a series of REST APIs and interfaces from the mainframe to the distributed environment, and we sort of think of it as Z as a service. So we want to focus on implementing innovation where it makes sense instead of worrying about infrastructure and platforms. So how did we do? Well, it took us about 18 months to get rid of 91 racks of servers. So we got down to 16 racks of servers that we use in our data center. And 91 racks of servers literally saved us $1 million a year in just facility and electric costs. The whole IT reconfiguration that we did saved us 25% on our IT costs, but the cost saving was not our primary focus. What we were trying to do is really reduce the constraints. So it was kind of icing on the cake that we got to reduce costs too. Now, there are a couple of obstacles that all of you have might face, and we talked about inertia too. Well, the first one I want to address is the myth of the mainframe being more expensive. You've seen some numbers and facts and figures, but I like to use this as a kind of a concrete example, I guess literally. So this is the Google data infrastructure that you see here. And that got me curious, and I did a Google search on how many servers that Google has. And it came back with about 1 million. You know, and since I found that on the internet, I know it's for sure true. So 1 million servers, even at just rock bottom prices, that's $2 to $3 billion, or the B, billions of dollars. If you think about it, the cabling for 1 million servers would be millions of dollars alone. And this Google infrastructure is so large that they issue a Google bike to get around the place. Now, Google's a great company. They're very successful. They do what they're best at. All I'm trying to say is that distributed infrastructure is very expensive, especially at this scale. It's way more expensive than mainframe infrastructure would be. So another obstacle that we have is fear of the unknown. Now, some companies have sort of lost track of what their mainframe software does because it just works day in and day out. They, maybe no one in here, but it's become unknown. It's become an unknown quantity to them, so they're afraid to update it. But the antidote to being something unknown, of course, is to learn about it and study it and understand it. Because what is known and testable is supportable. But if you don't know what you have, you're not going to be very comfortable in changing it. So, example I like to use is this semi-truck. If your business used this semi-truck to move freight and you were short of drivers, well, you would teach new drivers how to drive the truck. The new drivers might be nervous, they might be anxious, they might not know exactly how it operates, but once they found out it's really not too terribly different than driving a car, they'd be okay with it. But one thing the company would never do is hire 1,000 drivers with cars and have them move the freight instead. So the cousin to fear of the unknown is disinformation. There are people out there that just don't like the mainframe, and they spread disinformation about it. A little-known fact is why it's used as stealth is because they designed the stealth body after the cover of the mainframe, just so you know that. No one shows a cool picture like this when they're talking about the mainframe. They show something from the 60s or 70s. It's like they somehow think the mainframe is frozen in time, and there's a woman with a bouffant hairdo mounting reel tapes and operating a key punch. Well, we know that's clearly not the case. The mainframe is the most technologically advanced business computing system in the world, and the way to combat this disinformation is to be an advocate for the mainframe. And it should be kind of easy to advocate for something if you believe in it. Recently, we saw a congressional hearing where they were showing 8-inch floppies and talking about the mainframe. I don't know if anybody saw that. And it was really clear that Congress was getting misinformation. So we actually took it upon ourselves to invite several members of Congress to Detroit to see modern development on a mainframe. And they came, and we showed them, and they understood. And my point is if we can teach Congress people with no experience with IT that the mainframe is a viable platform, then you all should have some level of success advocating for it. So the mainframe is agile. Agile is a process. It's not tied to technology. Don't let anyone convince you that you have to develop slower on the mainframe, because anything done slower is automatically a constraint that people are trying to eliminate. I really don't understand why people are trying to throw away code in IP. It's not like the COBOL is some ancient language. It's not hieroglyphics. It's English. So the mainframe is an asset. It's an asset to be capitalized on. It's an asset that the upstart competitors probably don't have. So invest, innovate, capitalize. It ultimately will provide you a strategic advantage. Thank you. I'd like to also Thank Donna and Share for inviting me here. And it looks like I have a couple of minutes, so I'm going to share. Oh, maybe I don't have a time for a story. So instead, I'll introduce my friend from BMC, Jonathan Adams. Jonathan.
Thank you, Keith. So it's interesting following 4 distinguished colleagues who all believe the same thing that we believe at BMC. We believe firmly the mainframe is the foundation of digital business. It's the backbone. It's the thing that makes digital business work and work well. And you've heard stories from connected mainframe to hidden figures, and then the work that Keith and CompuWare did to move their processing and save millions of dollars in the process onto a platform we all know and love. But what is digital business? I don't think anyone yet has really defined that, so I'll take a stab at it quickly. Digital business is the way things work today. How many of you remember going to a grocery store or some checkout and you pulled out a paper check and you wrote, pay to the order of, right? How long did that take you? How long does it now take you to swipe a card or tap and pay or stick a card with a chip in? It's much faster. It's much faster. And those transactions process on the mainframe. In fact, how many of you are IMS people here? You realize IMS FastPath tends to be the platform of choice for credit card processing because of the speed. IMS was in Hidden Figures, right? It was the database developed to track the parts that sent John Glenn into orbit and men to the moon, and yet it didn't stay still. And like your AMG car, it has evolved and improved over the years. So we love that credit card processing. The Weather Service uses the mainframe for modeling and analytics. The cup of coffee you got this morning was probably made possible by your friendly mainframe. Think about it. Juan Valdez grows a crop. That crop has to get processed, probably manufacturing, checked on the logistics, probably happened on a mainframe. The power that serviced the store that turned on the coffee machine, probably managed by a mainframe. And whether the company themselves use that or not, their payroll is probably done by a company that does Linux on Z processing. Probably so. So none of you would be, you'd all be asleep today without the mainframe. You would. The last picture is one that's personal to me. You can't read it, but that's a screenshot of my son's Venmo account. Any of you know what Venmo is? A few. I didn't either until he went to college. He says, Dad, set up a Venmo for me. I'm like, what's a Venmo? He says, the way I'm going to get and receive and pay money. To whom? You know, I thought I paid your tuition already, son. What's this all about? He says, well, you see, when we go out for dinner, nobody carries cash. I'm like, yeah, you wouldn't know cash if it fell in your lap. He said, but I need a way of you know, splitting the tip or splitting the bill, or if we take an Uber and, you know, I don't pay for it, someone else does. So they use this service called Venmo. So I set it up. I said, do I put money in there? No, you link it to my account. So it's checking account. So I pulled it up on my iPad. I was going to bring it up here and show it to you, but it's such a large room, it's not a very intimate setting. You wouldn't be able to see it. So trust me, there are transfers between my son and his friends, to and from, for $2.50, $3, $4 a split of a tip at a restaurant, $3.50 for a biscuit. The largest thing I saw in there is he bought T-shirts from his fraternity for $25. Now, why is that important? Well, that is digital business. And even though Venmo doesn't process on a mainframe, all of the banks that actually back up those transactions and move the money do. And what does that do for you? Well, it increases the number of transactions you have to manage. I said BMC believes firmly that the mainframe is the backbone of digital business. We didn't just wake up one morning and make up that belief. We believe that, and these gentlemen believe that, because of the data. Because of 11 years of survey data that we've gone out and talked to the likes of you and said, what's happening in your shop? Are you growing MIPS? Are you shrinking MIPS? What are your top 4 priorities? What's most important to you? And we learn a lot of things over the years, and we can see changes and we can see trends and directions. And one of the trends and directions, excuse me, one of the things we see, transaction volumes going up. Data volumes are going up. Predictability, it's going down. It's going down. So it means volatility is occurring to you, and you're having to manage it. But it's okay, because your budgets are going up. What? They're not? So you mean you've got to do all of this with a flat, declining budget? Let me hear it. Okay, thank you. So how do you do that? Well, I know this. A lot of companies think you can move off to distributed and do that and do it well. But Keith just showed you how many acres and acres of processing and racks and servers and cabling you need, and the people you need to manage that. How many of you grew your workload last year and did not grow your technical staff? Yeah, that's what I thought, because the mainframe scales. And so a majority of the customers we surveyed last year, and the 10 years prior to that, by the way, still use the mainframe for mission critical work to handle this problem, to close that equation of how do I do more with the same people or fewer people in the same budget or a smaller budget. Or at best case, one that's not growing as fast as the numbers on the screen. So we look at that. We noticed in this year's survey, there's really 3 distinct groups. We ask, how many of you believe the mainframe is a viable long-term platform? 89% said yes. The year before it was 90%, so it's statistically insignificant, flat score. But we noticed when we dug under the data, there were 3 distinct groups. If I was in Germany, it'd be this, right? So group number 1, they're growing. Growing MIPS, that's 58%. They're the ones that are looking to fully leverage the scale and the platform efficiencies, the reliability, and the security of the platform. It's what Keith talked about. It's what Hayden, Ashok, and Peter talked about. The middle group, a little bit smaller, says it's a viable long-term platform. We're not really growing it. It's not ideal for all workloads. In fact, we're moving some things off, but the growth and the movement, it basically nets to flat. Net, it's a flat business. Their goal is to manage the cost, to keep it running, to keep it reliable, keep it secure, manage the cost. And then there's a third group. Now, thankfully for us, it's the smallest group. That's the group that's reducing their MIPS. That's 19% of our survey. They don't care about skills. Why bother to train people if we're getting rid of this thing? Let's just hope that we get every piece of work off of it before Fred retires. Because without Fred, we're screwed, right? And they seem to have that attitude. And they're the ones that believed not the information that these gentlemen shared with you this morning, but with the tabloids and the trade magazines that said the mainframe is dead. How many times has the mainframe been pronounced dead? More than a couple, at least 3. So we looked at that and we noticed 3 approaches. And the interesting thing about that growing group, 55% of the growing group came from companies that had revenues greater than $1 billion. Now, they weren't all large companies. In fact, there were companies that were small in the growing group. There were some that were anonymous, and we don't know, frankly, who they are. But there were companies that were small. There were companies in manufacturing and banking and retail and all over the map. 25% of those companies had revenues of $5 billion or more. So now we're talking about serious global-sized businesses. And we notice their trends. They're serious about skills. They're serious about training people. They want to make sure Fred's legacy lives after Fred retires. They're serious about that. They're serious about the security and the reliability of the platform. And we noticed that 3 of the world's 5 largest banks are in that group. They've made a conscious decision to make it the platform of choice to scale to the digital business needs that they face every day. So thank you so much for your time. Richard?
Excellent job, gentlemen. All right, we have a few minutes for some questions. Our first one got 121 likes. And just to let you know, we had a lot of questions show up on here. And we are going to make sure that those get answered, that those get talked about and discussed over the coming months, and that especially they're going to show up and get answered in Providence, if not well before that. So know that we're not just going to delete the ones that we see on here. We're going to take them all and download them and look through them. So first question is, how do I, as a young mainframer, innovate and get my peers excited about working on the platform? Perfect. All right. So something nice and tight. What do you got?
Well, I think showing that it's possible, doing things, not overwhelming, and I'm assuming this is colleagues that are what I lovingly refer to as tree huggers, maybe, who are just comfortable doing things the way they've been doing them for years and years and years. But you do need to change. And so, but don't overwhelm your colleagues. Show them, hey, look at this cool thing I can do with, you know, this IDE, or I can automate the deployment so you don't have to manually type in at the command line to do this. Just say, hey, this will save time. Because that's what all of this modernization or DevOps is about. It's eliminating waste, waste being defined as human activity, doing things that a tool can do for you, so that you can put more energy on creative activities that a tool can't do for you.
Great. Good. One more? Yeah.
I had a discussion with such a young developer at a very large company, and they ran mainframes, but at the same time they were a little bit behind. A lot of the ordering that was going on in that company was by phone. So people ordered for the products that this company sold by dialing the number. And he was sort of tasked with, how are we going to change this? And I asked him, well, you know, what are you doing with your mainframe team? And he said, well, we haven't really talked. I said, well, that's where it's all happening. And if you want to start, you know, generating new ways with your development for the company to interact with its customers, become more agile, become more capable, you know, take part in digital transformation, the first thing you got to do is you got to sit down with your mainframe team. And I've actually had a few of these discussions, and some people are actually realizing that that's sort of the way to go. They need to create first of all, communication between the developers, the distributed team, the mainframe team. Let's talk about how we can advance the business together.
Excellent. All right. For customers you've worked with who have newer IT management, what are some of the tactics that have worked to convince them of why stay on or move more workload to mainframe? Want to hear it again? Are you good?
So one thing which we find is that, you know, if we make it mainframe no different, I think it's one of the fundamental thing is for the people who don't understand mainframe, there is a question always, how do I, if I hadn't talked about DevOps and we talked about the, you know, how, you know, CompuWare does about internally, when people are used to, if you go to like AWS, or if you try to develop software today as a young, in any teams distributed, you'll have to make it self-service, you'll have to make it easy for them to not think about knowing a lot about mainframe. And that, to me, the speed, people think that anything I request on the mainframe team, it takes too long. So if you're able to reduce those hurdles and not make mainframe different, make it mainframe as any other server or any other service, is what I find more and more CIOs and others are saying, well, I can adopt this because it's just like another cloud. It provides my mission essential services. It runs 24/7. It's encrypted. It runs best platform for blockchain. So if you start thinking about new workloads like blockchain, machine learning, this is the platform of choice, but you don't have to do anything differently.
Okay.
Like young people can use Eclipse, they can use Java, they can use Xcode, they can use whatever they want to do. They can use mainframe in that context, and it'll keep running and not like what happened with Amazon last week.
Great. You had a comment?
Yeah.
Richard, I first ran into that comment about 9 or 10 years ago. I was visiting a customer, and there was a young director, VP of IT that was in the room and just taken over the group and grown up, not on the mainframe. And he referred to the platform as an exposure. It was like, I've been exposed to this, and I want to limit my exposure. And he says, well, why is that? And well, all the things that he had read that had poisoned his thinking, without truly understanding. And so you come back to the business case. What are your business goals? And I heard that in some of the presentations today. What are you trying to achieve? Well, one, we got to have availability. Okay, well, let's talk about 5, 6 nines of availability. We got to have reliance. We got to have scale. We got to have secure. Okay, check, check, check. And so we attack it from the business side, not a technology problem. And you're not going to win that person over in one argument, but you always come back to the business case and say, we can help make you successful and achieve your goals, and here's how.
Great, perfect.
I just wanted to add that one of the things that we do is that we allow the use of tools that new age developers are used to using already, using Jenkins or Sonar or all the other things. If they can do mainframe development with tools that they're used to on other platforms, it's not a 2-platform kind of group. It's a one group, and they just work on whatever application needs to be fixed.
All right, I'm going to ask you one final question here. Maybe just give me a one-sentence answer, because we're getting tight here. How do you retain experienced senior technical staff who are being lured by retirement? I would say just throw a ton more money at them. I don't know. That's my idea. Yeah, anything?
Well, one of the things that at our company is that we have hired dozens and dozens of younger programmers, and the older or more experienced developers actually enjoy training and working with the younger people. They feel like they're passing their heritage along. So it kind of, it's a small incentive, but it's something very rewarding for a lot of those developers.
That's a great idea.
Part-time with benefits.
And that's also
part-time with benefits. Mm-hmm. Great. All righty. It's almost time to let you go.